Vif lay fay. Sant yàlla.
looy xaar utal Wave nga scan nga fay nag doo ci yokku dara.
Jar Oil, the company, have filling stations across the country, and our rates are relatively cheaper than anyone else across the country. Jar Oil is the biggest producer and distributor of cement in the country with the most competitive prices in the market.
In the Gambia, we all move to different paces. Time is money, convenience is power, and now both are in your hands. No more long lines, no more late payments, no more missed chances. Not anymore. Because now the Gambia has its own super app, Zap. One app, one tap, endless convenience. Send money instantly, pay your bills in seconds, shop without borders, pay your rides, order your meal, buy your ticket, deposit and withdraw money for absolutely free. No extra charges, no hidden fees, only on Zap Super App. This is not just convenience. This is confidence. This is the future in your hands. And the best part, Zap is born right here. Built for us, designed for every Gambian home, every Gambian dream. So don't wait in the past. Step into the future. Download Zap today on App Store and Play Store and enjoy endless free services. Call us today on our toll-free number 1666 or on 260-0001. Zap. All in one. All for you. Tap in. Zap in.
On Thursday, the 8th of January 2026, you're with Coffee Time with Peter Gomez, and we're live on FM across the country, 92.1. And globally, you'll find us at www.wcr.gm. Thanks for joining us. Now, Gambian-born student activist Momodou Taal has become one of the most talked about young voices in the struggle for justice. Last year, his outspoken role in pro-Palestinian protests in U.S. campuses thrust him into international headlines when his visa was revoked and he was forced to leave the United States under threat of detention. He's currently in the Gambia for a brief visit and has very graciously agreed to join us this morning to share some of his journey with us before returning abroad. Good morning and welcome to Coffee Time, Momodou.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and privilege.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. From here, where are you headed?
We're going back to Dakar and then eventually back to the UK.
Okay, all right. Well, listen, tell us about your upbringing and how it shaped your worldview.
Yes, I find that beginnings are always interesting because depending on where you start the story will determine how you tell the story. But I think ultimately, something I wrote in my recently published book was
you've written a book?
Yes, it's called The Malcolm Effect Revisited.
We'll talk about it before you leave here.
But I think what I put in the intro, I said I kind of recall my childhood being an equal amount of copious cartoons as the news. So I would watch cartoons and CNN at the same time. And I remember my family dinners or with my conversation with my mother and my father and his brothers and uncles being punctuated with conversations of Pan-Africanism, conversations of politics. So from my mom's side, my great-grandfather said Dada Jawara. And then from my dad's side, my namesake is Momodou Taal. So again, my family's always been very, very political. They've held several key offices. Obviously, my uncle Baimas Taal, my dad as well, who's the chairman of a party here as well, Saliu Taal. So I think politics was somewhat written for me in many ways. But in terms of the specifics, going from, I think there's pivotal moments that I can point out to. One being the election of Barack Obama. I remember being like 13 years old. And I remember saying at the time, I'm going to become the first black prime minister of the UK.
You?
I remember saying that at the time.
Fingers crossed.
That's no longer my aspiration. That's no longer my aspiration. But at the time, that was my And another pivotal moment for me was reading the autobiography of Malcolm X. And I think that was gifted to me at the age of 16. And I think for me, I've always been enamored by people who were willing to fight for what they believe. And I was always enamored by and inspired by people who had such conviction that they were willing to risk something to see a better world. And I think those kind of pivotal moments shaped me, and to the point where I end up applying for a PhD in Cornell, and then my PhD looks at specifically development in West Africa, looking at how countries who have experienced colonialism develop their economies. And those are the kind of pivotal moments that we can talk more about if you have more questions.
Yeah, sure. Let's talk about, your activism. Was there a specific moment that pushed you from student to activist?
Absolutely. I think it was October the 7th. I mean, beforehand, I had been involved with the BLN movement, Black Lives Matter, for example, but I think it really heightened after October the 7th, because I think the Palestine cause is something that I have been always cared about from many angles: a humanitarian issue, an issue of settler colonialism, an issue of religion as well. Like, all of these are not divorced from the Palestine issue. But after October the 7th, there was so much confusion, right? How do we reconcile what seemingly seems like what a violent act has taken place, but we know that this is a century, if not more, long struggle for justice and liberation? So after October the 7th, I kind of emerged as a public speaker. I kind of emerged as an organizer on Cornell's campus. And effectively, that placed target on my back.
Okay. And what were those protests about? Why did you feel compelled to lead them?
I just felt immediately I always say that Palestine for me is a litmus test. And when I say litmus test, it's not that I think Palestine is the only issue. It's not that I think that you raise Palestine over every single other issue. It's that I believe when you look at the world from Palestine, so many issues become clearer. So for me, I don't want to live in a world in which we normalize the death of thousands of children. I know it sounds crazy. It sounds crazy to some people. I don't want to live in a world in which you can live stream a genocide and we can hear politicians talking about the extermination of a people so brazenly. I just don't think that's the world I want to live in. So that was what compelled me to talk.
And how did you process the U.S. government's decision to revoke your visa?
It wasn't a surprise, because I had been a victim of many right-wing attacks. For example, from 2024 December, the New York Post, which is a right-wing rag, they published a report saying that Pt.1, which is a right-wing organization, has compiled a list of names of faculty and students to give to Trump on day one to deport. And I was the only one named in the article. So that was December 2024. Then when Trump came to power, he vowed to locate pro-Palestinian protesters and deport them. So at that moment, I kind of thought my time in the US might come to an expedited end. But essentially, my lawyers said, listen, you are a target. They're going to come for you. And the options you have in front of you is you can try to lay low, and they might pick you up. We've seen images of Mahmoud Khalil and so many other students who have been picked up, essentially kidnapped by ICE. Or you can seek a national injunction that will protect you and other students in your similar situated position. I opted for the latter. I sued Donald Trump. It was Taal versus Trump in a federal court.
Oh, wow.
It was Taal versus Trump. And in normal times, or in a time in which the Constitution or legality is being followed, this would have resulted in a court trial, a hearing, perhaps an appeal, and maybe eventually get to the Supreme Court and to have the final decision on what will be the law of the land. That's in what we think will be normal times. As for me, all hell broke loose. The day I filed my lawsuit, I was told that the FBI and ICE are looking for me.
ICE, by the way, is the Immigration Customs Enforcement.
Exactly. I was told that ICE are going to be coming to my house. A few days later, my lawyers received an email from the government's lawyer that you must surrender your client to ICE custody. A few days after that, I received that my visa was revoked. And this is all before I've even seen the judge. The government's position, which is very dubious, they said that this is not retaliation, but we decided to revoke his visa one day before, coincidentally, one day before he filed the lawsuit. And that was the government's position. And I want to make it clear that I've not been accused of any crimes. I've not been violent. I'm not in like, there's no arrest warrant. What they cite in the report is that I created an uncomfortable environment for Jewish students on campus. And that's the only sole reason why my visa was revoked.
Did you have any problems with a Jewish student before?
No. I mean, again, this is not about Jewish and Muslim. This is not a war of religions, right? It's a war. It's a battle between those who believe that Zionism and settler colonialism are wrong, and those who support that.
But do you think that was how the Trump administration saw things?
No,
Muslim against Jewish.
I mean, they did,
or
but
Muslim against Jew.
But I think America is very interesting, given the history of the war on terror. We know that the Muslim is always constructed as the person who's violent. We know that the black person is always constructed as a person of violence, no matter what. Because I remember I've had conversation with Jewish students on campus, and I said to them, they said to me quite explicitly, your protests make us feel unsafe or uncomfortable. So I said, what is it about our protest? They said, oh, you're chanting from the river to the sea. Where does Israel fit in that? And I said that even our physiological responses are constructed by our upbringings. So, for example, if we were in the UK and an elderly white man saw a group of young black youths wearing hoodies and said, this makes me feel uncomfortable, the question would not be, you young black people stop wearing hoodies. The question would be, what is it about what you perceive or what you see in front of you makes you feel uncomfortable? Let's have that conversation.
Okay. So how do you connect the Palestinian struggle with African struggles for justice and dignity?
Absolutely. I mean, it's so interesting to me when you look at the people who are, I consider the kind of godfathers of Pan-Africanism, or the people who were invested in African liberation. They always saw, for example, when you look at in 1975 in the UN Declaration of 3379, which declared Zionism is racism, that was first endorsed by the African Union 2 years prior. And when the African Union reports, they say, because we recognize Zionism to be a form of colonialism as we have experienced that. When we look at what happened in Namibia, and we look at South African apartheid, we see that Israel to be a settler colonial state, and we have experience of that, right? And I've always said that the technologies that we see that are being used to oppress the Palestinians are being used and have been used to oppress the Africans. So it's so beautiful to see when I'm in places like Dakar, you see on streets, the Palestinian cause is an African cause, right? And I think our destinies, because of the legacies of colonialism, are intertwined.
Okay.
And then Kwame Ture, Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Toure, the Black Panther Party, they all saw that black liberation as being intrinsically linked to Palestinian liberation.
Mm-hmm. So what does your case say about freedom of expression on US campuses?
It would say that a couple things. There's a Palestinian exception, but more so, it's freedom of expression insofar as you don't challenge power, which is not true freedom of expression. It's interesting because, again, the Constitution, for which so many Americans hold sacred, is being rubbished right now, is being diminished right now, is being ignored right now. You know, they call it the mother of democracy, right? They call it the bastion or beacon or model, because what does America use oftentimes to condemn global South states? They say, in the name of democracy. But I think my case shows you that even within America, there's a limitation to that.
Okay. So when you left the US, where did you head to, and what's happening, to your studies?
Thank you for asking. So I left by road. I was in hiding for 2.5 weeks.
Goodness me.
I was underground. And it was funny enough, I remember distinctly, it was Ramadan and I was fasting, and it was quite a heavy toll on my body. And then my lawyer said, we have a new briefing schedule from the judge. They filed habeas corpus papers, which means that if I'm going to be caught by ICE, I will be tried according to the New York jurisdiction, because what has been the case so far is that Trump has been taking people to Louisiana, where he knows that the immigration laws are more harsh.
Oh, they're harsher, or harshest in Louisiana.
Yeah, the South. It's in the South. The judges are more right-wing or Republican, right? So the judge, who was, in my case, was a Biden appointee, recent to the bench, my lawyer said to me, given the kind of flagrant disregard of the judiciary in this moment. We don't even know if a favorable ruling will keep you safe. So I made a very abrupt decision. I think that conversation was by 8 p.m. on a Sunday. 11 p.m. on that same day, I called my friend and said, listen, I want to leave. What time can you get to upstate New York? They were living in Atlanta. They came, said, okay, next flight, I can be there by midday. By 1, they were with me on the Monday. And literally, I packed what I could. I drove to the Canadian border. Very nervous. I was kind of hiding every time I saw a camera, every time I saw a siren, thinking this is going to be it. And I was so nervous and I was sweating so much and so much anxiety, thinking of all the contingency plans, only to arrive to the border and it be very uneventful. Okay, Momodou Taal, British citizen.
Oh.
Okay, Momodou Taal, British citizen. Okay, how long are you going to be here for? I just said 1 week. Okay, welcome to Canada and come through.
Just like that.
Just like that.
No reference to your problems with the US government.
Nothing at all.
Interesting.
And after I left, I wanted to kind of decompress. So I went to Cuba for 3 weeks.
Cuba?
I went to Cuba. Cuba's a place I hold dear in my heart because of its revolutionary history. And after Cuba, I went back to the UK. And my studies, people have always asked this question. Mm-hmm. Cornell is letting me finish. I'm defending my PhD next summer.
Oh, fantastic.
And I will have my PhD. So for me, I think I've got the best deal. I stood up for what I believe, I'm safe, and I get my PhD.
Fantastic. And what's been the reaction of some of your fellow students? I mean, the ones left in the States?
Yeah, it's been nothing.
Especially those with whom you protested.
Yeah, I mean, it's been, I think they've expressed this a shame because I think, again, it's important to note the movement is never just one person. And that's where movements go to die. I'm not a particularly special person. But I do think I was someone that was very active. So I think they've expressed that a sadness with me going. But they understand and they're still carrying on the struggle. And I'm still in touch with them. And I still hope to see them sometime, somewhere in the world.
Mm-hmm. And how did they try to defend you? Try to stop your, deportation?
Yeah, I mean, they came out in strong force protesting. They came out, I think I had a petition with more than 10,000 signatures, for example, in defense of me. I was also a teacher, right? I was teaching a course for first year. My students wrote out defense and letters for me. Mm-hmm. My department, again, you ask how I'm able to finish my degree. It is because my department came out, I'm in Africana Studies, they came out and defended me. And they said there's no reason why Momodou should not be able to finish his studies.
Mm-hmm. And just to round off, on this question for this opening section of our conversation, what role do students play, do you think, in shaping global justice movements today?
Yeah, I think that's a historical legacy. When we look at the history of apartheid or Vietnam War, when we look at the anti-war movements, oftentimes, or look at, for example, civil rights movements, the genesis of a lot of these movements or the kind of the energy that's needed for this movement or the theoretical output is often generated within campuses.
Without in any way trying to maybe get you inside whatever. What about Gambian students? I mean, while you were here, have you been interacting with Gambian students?
Not as much as I would like to. I'm in touch with some, and I do keep abreast of Gambian politics quite closely. I know there's been some recent protests not too long ago. So I think there is a movement here and there is activism. And I think, for as far as I'm aware, Gambia has a very young population. So I'm definitely interested to see what that develops into.
Given, what is happening, all these, complaints about rising cost of living, the data issue, and, some, young people try to protest, for Pura to get out of this. What role do you see, student activism in... for want of a better expression, correcting those anomalies?
I think students have a pivotal role to play. I think students are the people in which they are going to bear the brunt of most of the effects of an economic downturn. So in that regard, I think students should be taken seriously. And I think it is to the detriment or peril to any government that ignores students.
Should any government be afraid of protests?
I don't think you should be afraid. I don't think you need to be afraid, but I think you should listen. I think you should take in consideration what people are saying.